Hello, welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm doing a 25.18 jungle tier list, served over content, subscribe, and let's get into it. There were a plethora of changes this patch. We saw some nerfs towards some of the champions which Riot have brought into the jungle in more recent patches. The likes of Silas and Kiana have received slight tags. We've seen a slight nerf towards some of the top end. The likes of Volibear and Briar have received slight tap downs. We also saw a buff to a Mumu, ended up being quite sizable, alongside a Sunfire buff and a Barmies buff to help the clear speed of some of these junglers. So let's get into it. The D tier is going to consist of relatively similar champions. The likes of Vayne still in the D tier, still has some player base in the jungle. I think Riot will have to do some follow-up changes if they ever want to make it like actually competitive as an option. Right now it's like if you're an OTP you might just sometimes play it in the jungle as like a for fun kind of thing, but it's not good enough to really be like a legitimate jungle pick at the moment. Riot's changes ended up being relatively net neutral, if anything net negative, which was just not good for a jungler which wasn't really that performant in the first place. The other picks within the D tier included the likes of Maokai. Still a competitively skewed tank, low agency, just not that great for solo queue. Same goes for Skarner, same goes for Sejuani. They kind of all fit the kind of, but just a competitive mold at the moment. It's unfortunate that jungle tanks outside of like some of the like very innately low elo skewed ones tend to suffer with this, but right now these three are kind of in that boat. I think Sejuani's the best of the three, primarily because she's been out for like so long as a jungler that she's had like a pretty aggressive tuning to try and make her as viable as she possibly can be for solo queue, whilst also being like competitively viable at the same time through like health ratios primarily on the W and like nothing down the base value on that ability. The other picks within the D tier include the likes of Nautilus. Obviously, this champion got adjustments to kind of push him into the jungle in, I believe, 2 patches ago. It ended up not really being enough. He needs a slight bit more if he wants to be a genuine like jungle option. But there are builds which work on him. I don't think he's a horrible pick. He's not like a... I wouldn't say he's like a C. I mean, he can compete with the C tier, but I wouldn't say he goes much higher than the C tier at the moment. He just ends up fitting the boat with some of these other lower agency, like tank utility junglers, albeit you can opt into like Leandries and like some of the AP items and usually do alright on those, like with their functionality. Set sits within the D tier alongside Nasus. These are like the other 2 remaining D tier picks. I removed Nyla. The changes ended up just being quality of life. Nyla jungle still isn't good. It doesn't have like... his numbers are just not strong enough at the moment. In the case of Set, he's a close C tier option. He probably sits towards the high end of the D tier. Like, I think if they swung a slight bit harder, he would legitimately be like a C tier, maybe even close to B tier option. Like, he's not that far off. His clear is just a bit too slow at the moment. Obviously, he has the limitations of being a champion which is just forced to run at you for his ganking pattern, which can, it's a limitation of the pick. In the case of Nasus, obviously, it's just a mid to low elo skewed champion where you can get access to a bit more stacks within the jungle. I think if Nasus was better, he could genuinely compete as like a C tier option. That being said, at the moment though, I just wouldn't really recommend it. He'll be like played as like a for fun option, and some people do make it work, but it's not a like mainstream jungler which I'd really recommend at the moment. It doesn't compete with like the mainstream junglers which I recommend at the moment. Anyway, so the C tier then, there's quite a lot of champions here at the moment. Tryndamere, I'm gonna lead him off with being in the C tier. Obviously, ever since the inspired pentakill, I tweeted about it. I was like, I wonder if like Tryndamere will have the Mundo kind of effect on it, where the play rate just skyrockets. It ended up gaining some, not skyrocketing. I just don't think he's that like popular of a champion, and it's not like insanely good in the jungle either. Unless you like min-max it, but that's the case with a lot of junglers. It'll just be a lot better if you like really maximize the value of the pick. For the moment, I'm gonna have him in the C tier. I think you can make him work. I don't think he's one of the best options in the jungle though, and he obviously has his limitations. No hard CC, no like a reliance on just having a lot of damage, and if you are behind the curve, because he's like entirely reliant on stats checking, it can just feel quite lackluster of a pick. Darius was from the C tier. He's lost most of his player base at this point. It's unfortunate, but they overswung on the nerfs, and now he sits as like a low C tier jungler. Just not a pick I would really recommend or even consider like going towards. Gwen. I think Gwen's actually a high C tier pick, maybe even B tier pick. Like, this champion see, it now looks like jungle is her most performant role. Top lane took a huge hit in the previous patch when they nerfed the attack, the slow on VR. Through jungle, you usually get access to something like approach velocity, so it actually doesn't matter as much because you can still usually get onto the target. But for top lane, you're like opting into like either resolve tree, where you're getting not like approach, or if you are going the inspiration tree, you are opting into like cosmic biscuits or boots biscuits, and yeah, you usually end up lacking approach, which just it's quite a big feels bad in top lane. Jungle Gwen, yeah, I'm gonna have in the C tier. I don't really recommend it. It's primarily played by just people who are comfortable with champion, and if you're one of those, you can still like opt into it every so often. I think if you're not, then I wouldn't really recommend it that much as an option. Brand sits in the C tier. He's fine. He needs more in jungle still. Like he's close, but not quite there. I'd still recommend some of the other dots junglers over him at the moment. Your Morganas, your Lilias, your Zyras all just are like the tier above, and yeah, that kind of just makes Brand the undesirable pick of the four. Shyvana, been in bad state for a while now, just sits within the C tier. Even if she's like better in this Edo bracket, the fact that she just doesn't convert that well the higher up you go just makes her really unrecommendable champion, and for that, yeah, I'm just gonna leave her in the C tier at the moment. It's obviously like weighted by personal bias, but like I don't think Shyvana is a good champion to learn, not worth putting time into, so I'm just gonna have her lower down on the tier list at the moment, even though yeah, she can probably be a B tier option akin to some of the other picks, slightly lower down at the moment. Gragas is alright. He benefited from the AP mage item buffs. That was enough to push him into the C tier and like act as like a legitimate jungle option again. I don't think he's amazing though. Like he's a high C tier pick, if even. Like I'd say he kind of sits around this area at the moment. Rengar, obviously everyone's probably, like if you're a jungler, you're probably watching the Natty Nat climb in Korea at the moment. He is performing incredibly well. Like he is absolutely dominating the ladder at the moment. I think something like an 80% win rate, like like over 1 KLP, which is crazy. Like you don't need me to tell you that to understand that. Like this pick, I think if you like, it's very clear. If you understand how to play Rengar and pilot him really well, he's an incredible champion. Like he is one of the best like time investments in the jungle. That being said, though, if you're just if you're beginning to play Rengar for the first 100 games, you'll lose most of them. Like that is just how it's going to go. You can already see it in the telegraphed win rate for Mytilo at the moment, where people have started hopping onto Rengar, and his win rate has tanked for it. So I'm not going to recommend him for solo queue, like if you haven't put the time into him, but I would, like, if you want to learn him, he's an incredible champion to have within your pool, and like a lot of assassins in the jungle, he kind of, yeah, like, fits out, but is probably one of the most extreme examples. I think Kiana is close, but not at the same time. Like, Kiana is also an extreme example, but I think Rengar is just the most extreme. As I said, I'm in the C tier at the moment. The picks, obviously, clears incredibly fast. One of the fastest clears in the game. And if you can execute him well, he's also like really good in that aspect. But obviously, no hard CC, and you have to pilot the pick well. If you don't pilot the pick well, then once again, he kind of is this assassin jungler. Like a lot of the assassin junglers at the moment, if you can't pilot or like execute their combos effectively, then they are just worse than other options. I would recommend a more traditional bruiser or like a tank, because you are going to more consistently win games with champions like those. Because when you are opting into these like Talon, Zed style champions, you have to understand that you are the reason you are going to win most of your games, and if you aren't willing to step up to the mantle, then they are picks which I would recommend just avoiding. Vi is on the weak side at the moment, primarily because of her competitive presence. It's unfortunate that the champion has kind of fallen into that kind of space, but yeah, just going to be in the C tier at the moment, just below the bar. And same goes for Graves. I think Graves, I mean, it'd be nice for Graves to get buffed next patch. The concern always with Graves being buffed just before Worlds is how heavily does he warp the meta. So maybe they wait. Maybe they don't buff him. He could do with the buff and could have done with it a while ago. But right now, yeah, he sits as like a C tier champion. He's just a bit too heavy gold-wise. Like if you are comfortable with that and you are willing to understand that like you are going to need a lot of resources in the game to be valuable, then you can make him work. But if you're someone who maybe doesn't quite have that, like you're not willing to take away like as many resources on the map, then yeah, I just recommend avoiding him at the moment. I don't think he's like good enough to be playing. The champion buffed in the C tier is Talia. I'm just going to bump out to the top of the C tier. She, like Gwen, could probably like be bumped up to the B tier. I'm not in a hurry though, because I think they're like they linger between the two. Like, she's definitely better in the jungle now. The changes were quite good for that. They gave her a bit more jungle monster damage, I believe it was. And yeah, I'm just going to have her in the top of the C tier now. Probably goes back to being this, like, considerable AP option if you already play her. If you don't, then you're probably still not going to play her, which is why I think she could probably remain as a C tier option. Dropping down to the C tier is Silas. The nerf of this patch was pretty sizable. I think they could have maybe gone 140. Like, I don't think he's that over the top in the jungle at the moment, not compared to like your Kiana's, for example, but they went 130, and yeah, I'm just going to drop him down to the C tier. I think if you're comfortable on him, he can still be a really good option. You probably just be a bit more selective on the games where you play him, rather than just picking him in like every situation possible. He's still going to maintain a decent chunk of his player base, though. Like, Silas, when he's good in jungle, will always be a popular champion for the most part. Moving on to the B tier then, I am bumping Kiana down to the lower end of it. Okay. Kiana, for this Elo bracket, might just be a C tier champion. But the caveat to that is, I really recommend learning Kiana. I think Kiana is still an incredible jungler. Like, she is still one of the best champions to put time into. In Elite, she's still going to be one of the top options, even with the nerfs, which were pretty sizable. So that is just something to be like cognitive of when playing this champion. But yeah, the nerfs were real. She's definitely a bit weaker as an option. If you don't want to play Kiana, I don't think you need to. I think in the previous patch she was like, yeah, I mean, she was just like #1 jungler in Elite, so it was kind of like necessary. But yeah, now I'd say she's just like a champion worth putting time into. But if you're not comfortable with it, then yeah, you can just kind of leave her as an option there. Yeah. Hecarim, still in my B tier. I mean, there's a lot of champions like this at the moment, like your Hecarims, your Lee Sins, your Eves, which are all really, like, Nilly in this space as well, which are all really, really feast or famine junglers. Like, I think if you can pilot them really well, they can have really high highs, but I think if you pilot them badly, then they oftentimes look pretty useless within the game. So that is something always to consider when playing champions like this. If you're, like, put the time into them, you'll be rewarded. If you're not willing to put the time into them, then they traditionally just end up being outvalued by other options. I think Eve is probably the worst of the 5. Not saying she's bad or anything. I think Eve in the right spots can be quite good, especially if you understand how to utilize the self effectively on this champion. But like the other ones, I think are all pretty good at the moment. And Nidalee, I actually genuinely think is decent in average play at the moment. Like, put a bit of time into her, and you'll really be rewarded playing this champion. Zac is going to be higher. Maybe I'll talk about Zac in a moment. So some of your other AP options include the likes of Karthus, Teemo. So Karthus, better in Elite, worse in average play, but rewarding to put time into. Teemo, better in average play, traditionally ends up being worse in Elite. I think both these champions kind of swing depending on like how high up the ladder you go. Udyr also sits within the B tier, mostly driven by OTPs. Like, AD Udyr, I think has spots where it's playable. I see it's actually played in like 50% of his games, which is crazy to think about. Like, Liandry is like 47% of his pick rate, and then the next like 5 items are all AD. It'll be like anything from Stridebreaker, Ravenous, Youmuu's, Hexplate, Shojin, stuff like that. And like Trinity as well, and people kind of just experimenting with those builds. There's some which look decent, there's some which look pretty mediocre, if anything just bad, and it's just about what you're comfortable with in the game, and whether you think you can pull off AD Udyr, you might be able to, but traditionally you're just going to default on like Liandry's Udyr, and I think it's pretty solid at the moment, so I do have him towards I'd say it's like a mid to high end B tier option at the moment. Lilia, Morgana, and Zyra are the other ones which kind of fill out the rest of the AP options within the B tier. The case of Lilia, I think she's primarily a counterpick to some of the tank junglers at the moment. Probably one of the weaker ones. Like, she's definitely fallen away over time, but I think in the right spot, she can still be a very powerful champion, especially if the enemy team doesn't have the lockdown to deal with you. Morgana's doing really well at the moment. The buff she's received in the recent patches has been massive for her consistency, and with consistency, I mean, yeah, she just becomes more reliable as a champion and more recommendable in that regard. So Morgana, I'm going to have her in the B tier. I think she's actually a pretty good option. Maybe even like my premier B tier recommendation at the moment, even over Zyra. But like Zyra still clears incredibly well, and it's about how you utilize the poke and the effective damage that this champion can output. She has good objective taking, good control. I think she's in a really good state at the moment. Mainly let down in competitive by a lack of AD mid laners, but you're not going to run into that issue as much in solo queue because you're like playing alongside the Kiasos and your Yones a bit more frequently. Right, so Kindred and Zac. Actually, there's a couple here. So Kindred, I'm still leaving in the B tier. I still think if you can pilot this champion well and understand how to effectively use her early game, she's still a really, really good option. In the case of Zac, I think the champion has really benefited from the. I mean, he got a quality of life change this patch, but also Barmy's being buffed. Great for him. He is #1 Sunfire purchaser, I believe, and yeah, Barmy's gaining more damage helps his clear. The full item doing a bit more damage to jungle monsters also helps him. So just being on the map a bit more consistently is really big for a champion like Zac. And yeah, the quality of life change was also nice. It is going to be some level of power, probably not a huge amount, but yeah, Zac I'd say is legitimately like a good tank option in his current state. Sits towards behind of the beta. He's traditionally one of the more not elite skewed, but like he treads that way a bit more than like your Amumu's and your Ramesses, for example, which I kind of recommend over him in this Elo bracket. Olaf. Olaf's a weird champion. Like, he's not popular within the jungle, but he's not a bad option. Like, he's always had a pretty solid win rate. There's always been compositions where this champion's been relatively valuable. He even sees competitive play in China, which is, like, crazy to think about, like, that sometimes people will just genuinely opt into him. It traditionally ends up being, like, later on into, like, Fearless, like your Game 4, Game 5s. But I think he's a legitimate option, and I think people kind of sleep on him / just don't really want to play him. Like, if he got buffed again for jungle, I think he would easily take over as one of the best picks in the jungle, but I think Riot would have to be really cautious because Olaf could just end up dominating mods if they were to do that, like, next patch. I don't think they're going to do it just in general, but it's just something to be cognitive of. Like, I think Olaf is a legitimately good AD pick to have in your pool at the moment if you understand the spots where you want to bring him out. Some of your other AD options within the beta include the likes of Neferi. I'm gonna put a little splitter here. So Neferi and Pantheon, I still have in the beta, but like mid-beta picks. Pantheon's actually lost a lot of his pick rate in jungle, and for solo queue, he doesn't look that amazing anymore. Competitive, I believe he's still like #1 AD jungler because they value his like point and click CC, his durability through his kit, his relatively good skirmishing, his powerful ultimate to allow him to be be global. Like it makes sense. Like Pantheon. This kit is perfect for competitive. It's honestly surprising that he hadn't kind of been brought back in sooner. Obviously, like support Pantheon was there for a bit, but had kind of died away more recently. The case of Neferi, she's still relevant. Like, people will still pick her, and I still think she can be quite good in the right spots. She's not the same champion mode. Like, she's definitely a bit more conditional, and you have to be a bit more comfortable on her. But I'd say she's still a legitimate B tier pick. Like, I don't think the B tier picks are bad, and I honestly think a lot of the time, if you put if you put a lot of time into a lot of the B tier picks, they will like outvalue some of the A and even S tier champions at the moment. Like, I think jungle like isn't that like the bottom and the top isn't really that far away from each other, and it does obviously come down to a lot of mastery. Like, if you understand how to play your champion, you can beat a lot of S tier picks as the C tier options. I believe that was the last champion in the beta. I might drop... okay, there's one champion I'm considering dropping down, and that is Nocturne. Nocturne looks pretty bad after his chain, after like the nerfs he received. Even with the Hexblade buffs, he definitely lost a meaningful amount of power. So I will drop him down to the top of the beta. I might end up putting him back up to the A if I feel like this just doesn't suit him like well. Like I recommend him higher than the beta, but he's definitely less recommendable now. Like, the champion has lost a substantial amount of damage, and the power through the item obviously is only going to come in at like 12 minutes, like on average, and yeah, it's just going to be sizable amounts of clear speed and just like overall power loss through the champion. Moving up from the B to the A tier is 3 champions. So I'm going to be bumping Rammus up. He's doing a lot better at the moment. The Sunfire buff's also nice for him. There is a large portion of Rammus players which opt into Sunfire within his build, and yeah, that helped him. He doesn't have the same level of agency he's had in the past. Like, Rammus's damage is not good. If anything, it's bad. Like, it's just not... it's just outright bad. That being said, though, he's one of the tankiest, if not just the outright tankiest champion in the game at the moment. It is absurdly hard to kill him. And people, especially in, like, lower brackets play, will auto-attack him with W up, will not ignore him. They will like give him value within the game, and that's very, very impactful. So Ramos, I'm gonna bump him up to the A tier. He's also quite easy to play, so that's also like another merit of the champion. And yeah, I think he's just doing a lot better at the moment, especially with like some fire buffs and just some of the other things shifting around him. Rek'Sai and Amumu are the other two champions I'm bumping up. Rek'Sai with the 4 base AD, I believe it was in 25.16, has been doing substantially better. She's really good in Elite at the moment. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if during Worlds or just like throughout competitive as time goes on with some of the other junglers being nerfed down, Rek'Sai like appears again. Obviously we saw like Blabber play it. I think we saw one other region maybe play it in the jungle. I can't specifically remember which one though. Might have been EU. I'll have to think about that because I actually just don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it's definitely like becoming more apparent that she's a pretty good option. And I think even for average play, she's in a pretty solid spot at the moment. So I'm going to be bumping her up to the A tier. And Amumu got buffed this patch. The buff was meaningful. It is a buff to his second max ability. The Q now has a flat mana cost and has 2 seconds shaved off of its cooldown. More CC on this champion, maybe an additional bandage shot in a fight, can be really valuable. So I am going to be bumping him back up to the A tier. I really like Amumu as a recommendation because he is really easy to play and he's a great beginner jungler for a lot of people. Or just if you like role swapping, just like learning the jungle playing Amumu can be a really valuable thing to go to. Trundle, very easy to play. The stat checky, like counterpick to like AD jungler. In that regard, he can be quite valuable. Just avoid like high mobility comps. That tends to be where the champion suffers, and you'll usually get good value out of the pick. Bel'Veth and Marcy are your very solo queue-esque champions. I mean, they're both still really, really good if you understand how to maximize your gold income, whether that's just trading 1-for-1 and then like through your item spikes being more valuable as the game goes on. I think these two picks can easily take over, and I think if you play them, they can be really valuable in your arsenal. If you don't play them, they do have mastery curves. Like Yi and Bel'Veth are picks you can't just first time and expect to be valuable on. I think Yi has a lower barrier to entry, but it's still more of a barrier to entry than he's had in like previous iterations. Bel'Veth, you need to understand how to pilot the early game. If you play Bel'Veth early game bad, you won't be able to snowball your like advantages, or like you won't have an advantage to snowball, and you'll really suffer as the game goes on. Mordekaiser, the like buff to his Q, the like AD ratio they gave to him allows him more flexibility. He was already a pretty good jungler though, and I've kind of just left him in the A tier. I think you can get legitimate value out of his pick, and more people should probably play it. Like I think that he's actually got a big space within the jungle, which like people can opt into. Nunu, I have him in the A tier. Obviously benefits from Sunfire being buffed this patch. There is still a decent chunk of his audience which plays tank Nunu. Obviously Proto Belt phase rush Nunu I believe is kind of the norm these days. Just being able to do a bit more damage, have a bit more agency can be really valuable on this champion. But like opting into like your tank builds, having like a Dark Seal for like your damage for like damage purposes can also be a way of playing the champion. And yeah, I think Nunu's in a pretty good spot. He's pretty unique though. You don't tend to see him like played by many like first timers. He usually has a pretty core like audience of players, and that can definitely skew some of the data. Or yeah, like it's just worth putting time into the champion traditionally. Kayn and Xin, I'm going to drop them towards the lower end of the A tier. I'm not as big of a fan of these champions anymore. Kayn, I think, has probably just dropped over time. Like he was like an A tier option or like an S tier option even. They nerfed him, took away some of his health growth, and then I dropped him down to the A tier. But over time, I think he's just dropped throughout the A tier. Like I just don't recommend him maybe as much as some of the other options because he's quite slow to come online, and that can definitely be quite punishing. That being said, games in low elo are going to go longer. That does give him increased value in this bracket. Like I don't think he's like a bad pick by any means, but I think it can be really valuable just having the ability to be on the map a bit earlier and do a bit more. Xin lost genuine amounts of power when they nerfed him. He's still a good option. Like I still recommend him because he's like a pretty easy to play pick and has a really clear win condition. Yeah, I mean, like even with the ASU, like the ASU bought some players also like lowered his win rate. So don't get like fooled by the win rate. He's still like a good option. I just think the nerfs were like meaningful, and he probably sits more like a mid A tier option nowadays. Moving on from Xin, we have Fiddlesticks, unique champion, can be really, really powerful. I mean, out of my AP options in the A tier, I think these three kind of make up the core bunch. Fiddlestick's ultimate is incredibly powerful, and at least his early game like potential is really, really high. The Cocoon is a very powerful CC ability. And she doesn't even scale as horribly as she has in previous iterations. Most champions in the game are like this though these days. Like most champions have a more flat curve. Like it's not quite as egregious as like I mean, I'll take an old example of like level 135 Renekton, which like auto won every lane. It's now like a lot more smooth, where it's like most champions can just like be valuable early or be increased value early and like sacrifice some of their power late game, or sacrifice some power early game for that power late game. And at least I think is just a bit more flat of a champion these days, and I think that's better for like average play. Like she's not quite as elite skewed as she has been, but even then she's really good in elite at the moment, and I think she's a legitimate solid A tier option. Mundo, have him in the A tier. He's great counter pick in the jungle against low percentage health damage compositions where he can freely scale. He is a really, really good opt-in option. That being said, though, I think if you pick him in the wrong spots, he can definitely feel kind of lackluster to compare to some of the other picks, because he needs to take time to come online, and he can be susceptible to like certain types of like damage compositions or like peel, which he just can't really deal with. Ivan, on a pretty good state. Oh, I mean, in a pretty good state at the moment. The champion got, I mean, the buffs were a long time ago. The Q increased root duration, but it has been decent since then. Like, I think he's a genuinely pretty solid option to opt into. You can play both the AP or the enchant builds at the moment. It's funny to see it looks like he's kind of bleeding back into comp because of the kind of trend of running Redemption or Mikhail's on like every support at the moment, or because like the items are just generally really strong. And Ivan's a great Redemption user, which if you want to play him in the jungle, that can be a really just powerful way of playing the pick. So something to be like conscious of. I think the champion's in a pretty solid spot at the moment. Talon and Kha'Zix are great AD assassins. Sure, I miss Shaco. Why do I miss Shaco? Oh, Shaco's a bit lower down. I'll talk about Kha'Zix. I'll talk about Shaco. Okay, so Kha'Zix has been doing well for a while now. I think people have been kind of sleeping on the champion, but as like other things have been nerfed around him, I think he's really jumped up as like a very solid A tier AD assassin. I still have Talon in this area. Like I think Talon is still an incredible option. Great for smurfing as well. Like the map mobility this champion has, combined with his like upfront burst, really really nice, and yeah, great for smurfing in that regard. That is why he is like such a primary option there. The other pick which we're going to talk about was Shaco. He kind of fits in with these other like B tier kind of Feast or Famine junglers, especially AD Shaco. AP Shaco not so much. AP Shaco is more about control and just getting your item spikes. AD Shaco is a lot more about finding early picks and then snowballing your advantages through like getting your items, your like Yomus, your collectors. I really actually don't know what AD Shaco goes that much these days anymore. I haven't really been paying attention to Shaco builds, but he's sits as like one of these like Feast or Famine junglers. I got the hiccups, nice. Wukong sits towards the top of the A tier. I believe he is number 2 jungler in competitive, maybe number 1. I actually don't know if Wukong is deemed. No, Wukong is not deemed higher than Pantheon, because it's just because Pantheon's banned like every game. It's like red side bans is always Yunara is a Pantheon. Wukong is like number 2 behind Pantheon. It's slash Trundle, I guess. He's in that area. Anyway, Trundle, not Trundle, Wukong, really well, doing really well at the moment. Really good in solo queue. Obviously has like an incredibly powerful ultimate, very clear item breakpoints, great into a lot of the AD junglers as well with his built-in armor passive, and overall just a pick I'd really recommend learning. Like I think he's in a great state at the moment, very deserving of an A tier placement. I also have Viego in the A tier. I think this champion has been, he's still doing really well, even with the changes he received not too long ago to kind of bump lane Viego up or snarf jungle Viego. Ended up just kind of giving him a bit more item flexibility. Like I've seen people do a bit of everything now on Viego, and that's like pretty nice for the champion. That being said, though, you can still just play like the default build. I believe it was the collector variant, because you like really value that item on Viego. The damage to like the execute to guarantee takedown, so you can like get the possession off is really, really valuable. That combined with the fact that the item is just really nice for him, the damage it can provide, combined with the lethality. I mean, yeah, just damage in general. So yeah, there you go. I have him in the A tier. I think he's a really good option at the moment. It's one of the most popular junglers in the game. So the S tier then. Jarvan sits towards the low end of the S tier. The nerfs to him in the previous patch were meaningful. That being said, though, he's still like my number one recommended like default on jungler. I think if you're auto-filled, he's probably the pick to go to. Being able to provide a bit of utility, a bit of self-agency, great like ultimates to kind of like I think Jarvan's a very clear champion of just go on this target, and that can be really good for like the chaotic nature of solo queue. So I like really like him in that aspect. Briar got a slight tag down this patch. They wanted to kind of bring back the ability to play lethality Briar. I haven't actually checked the numbers on it, whether it's like competitive with her bruiser builds, because her bruiser builds are like by far and away, or like at least in the previous patch, were by far and away like her primary way to go. You could sometimes opt into a damage item, but it ended up like costing something because of like the health ratios she now has on her kit. But yeah, the changes were like, I believe it was enough to Q and enough to one other part of her kit, or like her ult bonus AD ratio, I believe it was, or like some part of her ult lost damage. Anyway, we also gave her some more range through her R. It's now 10, went from 10,000 to 12,000, and they also made her a bit more reliable, I believe it was, so you no longer like have an auto attack which fizzles on the expiry of W, I believe it was. Poppy in the S tier, I think as an counter pick option, she's one of the best in the game, and she's obviously very highly appreciated as a champion, especially in competitive. That being said, for solo queue, you are going to not have as much damage as some of the other junglers, but the utility you can provide is incredibly valuable, and you can still opt into damage. Like a Dark Harvest, Sundered Sky Poppy does hit like a truck, so you can still like do that in that aspect. The other picks from the S tier include the likes of Warwick, who is just really good for this Edo bracket. It's why he's like maintained a spot in the S tier for quite a while now, and the adjustments he received to top lane to kind of nerf him there ended up being relatively net neutral, if anything even net positive for jungle, so that was pretty big for him there. Jax is a really slept on jungler. I think as a counter pick, he's incredible. Even just generally, Jax is a really good jungle option at the moment. The attack speed buff like a while ago now was meaningful, was really meaningful in fact. Like, it really helped his clear speed, and the tools this champion provides through his damage, through his like the counter strike ability, through the kind of just like pick potential he has, I think it's really, really valuable to have him as a jungle option, and I think more people should probably use him, like specifically to as a counter pick to like your Briars or your Xin Zhaos in this bracket, but just generally like as a good option. Remember, 2 AP picks are still Echo and Diana. They still perform really well in the jungle at the moment. Maybe not the top of the S tier, albeit like I don't know what the top of the S tier looks like. There's like a lot of the A and the S tier really comfortably can kind of like be swapped about because of like I'd say relative balance in the jungle at the moment. But I think for AP options, these are like my two definitive go-tos. Plus Volibear. Like, Volibear is like AP jungler because he goes like cosmic, and primarily his damage is just going to be AP. But you do have the flexibility of Cleaver, and even with the nerfs this patch, he's still performing really well. I think they could have gone a slight bit harder than what it was. He lost 1% attack speed per 100 AP. So if you have 300 AP, you lost 3% attack speed. I think obviously that stacks up to 5 on the passive, so that would be 15% attack speed, which is something, but it's not a huge amount of something, so he's still going to be my premier recommendation of the patch. I still think he's really good, and just generally, I think it just comes down to what you feel comfortable with. I mean, I still like recommend the top picks because I think they are rewarding for not quite as much time investment as some of the other options, or whether that's through like ease of play or just the fact they have really nice mastery curves. It can really depend, but yeah, those are my thoughts. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.